Braw, braw lads, on Gala water, bonny lads, on Gala water. Let them all say what they will, the gree is aye wi' Gala water.
To explain the significance of our visit to Torwoodlee Tower, James Pringle, Laird of Torwoodlee, and past President Gordon Keddie.
For the first gathering, on the kind invitation of Captain James L. Pringle, the first official ceremony in connection with the Braw Lads gathering took place at Torwoodlee House and the Old Tower. The ceremony took place on the Wednesday evening prior to the Saturday of the gathering. The visit was for the purpose of cutting the sod and the gathering of a stone from the tower to be used in the ceremony at the Market Cross on the Saturday. The sod and stone were symbols that would be used in the act of seizing to be carried out at the Market Cross to commemorate the event which took place upon the soil of Ettrick Forest near the Shield and manor of Galashiels in 1503, when James IV took Margaret Tudor as his bride. Margaret Tudor received as part of her dowry an area of Ettrick Forest, of which Galashiels formed a part of. This was a very important event in Scottish history, as 100 years later it led to the unification of the crowns in 1603. The official visit in 1930 started at the entrance to the Mansion House, where the Provost introduced the Braw lad, who addressed Captain Pringle as follows. I have the honour to present to you Captain Pringle, Laird of Torwoodlee. Greetings from the people of Galashiels, and I crave permission to cut a sod from your lands and to take a stone from your tower. The request was immediately granted by the Laird, who added a humorous note that they could take as many more as they liked. It is a custom established from the first visit that the Laird offers the official party a stirrup cup before proceeding to the tower. In the early years, the official party rode to the tower, where the Braw lad, after cutting the sod, placed it on a cushion in front of the saddle of Provost Haywart's horse. The Braw lad then, on the invitation of Captain Pringle, entered the tower and selected a stone, which was placed in a similar nature as to the sod, but this time on Captain Dunn's, the head marshal's horse. Horses are no longer taken to the tower. Instead, the official party are led by a piper, and although the sod is still cut by the Braw lad, the stone is now taken from the tower by the Braw lass, and both symbols are carried back to Galashiels in the possession of the male attendants. The official ceremony at the tower is concluded with an address from both the President and the Laird. During the visit, the town band leads the assembled crowd in the singing of the Bonny Woods of Torwoodlee and Braw lads.
The bonny wood o' Torwoodlee, the bonny wood o' Torwoodlee, near thee I spent life's early day, and won my Mary's heart in thee. The broom, the briar, the birken bush, bloom bonny o'er thy flowery lea, and all the sweets that yen can wish, frae nature's hand are strewed on thee. The bonny wood o' Torwoodlee, the bonny wood o' Torwoodlee, near thee I spent life's early day, and won my Mary's heart in thee. For ben thy dark green plantain's shade, the cushat crudels amorously, the mavis down thy bighted glade, God's echo ring frae every tree. The bonny wood o' Torwoodlee, the bonny wood o' Torwoodlee, near thee I spent life's early day, and won my Mary's heart in thee.
Braw lad, the Braw lass and their attendants then join the rest of the riders and ride back to Galashiels to the borough chambers, where in the main chamber the Braw lad hands over the sod and stone to the President. The President, together with principals, then assemble on the balcony, where the President proclaims to the people of Galashiels that he will hold the sod and stone in safe custody until they are required on Saturday for their ceremony at the Old Town Cross. This visit to Torwoodlee is a very important part of the Braw lads' gathering and continues links with one of the most historic families in Scotland. I was fortunate enough to catch up with the current Laird of Torwoodlee, James Pringle, and started off by asking him what was the earliest memory he had of the Braw lads and lassies' visits to Torwoodlee.
I'm not sure if it was the first time I came down to be here or whether it was maybe the second time, but my very earliest recollection was being stopped by the police at the top of the road coming off the A7, and my cousin who was driving me saying, "It's all right, I've got the young laird here," and we were let through. Yeah. Now, I can't remember anything after that. It was all a haze, but I think that was the first year, the year of my father's death, which was 1969. And he died 16th of June, and I suspect I was thrown in at the deep end, said, "You're now the laird, you can bloody well get on with it."
I can remember when you say that as a boy, staying in the 5th Ward, coming up on our bicycles to try and get in for the ceremony, and the police used to keep us out, but we always managed to sneak in.
Oh, yeah.
So was it regarded as a private ceremony, or was it?
I don't think it's ever been regarded as a private ceremony, because we're doing things for the people of Galashiels. It's the representatives coming, and I suspect the police took it upon themselves to say, you rabble from the 5th Ward, we don't need you helping.
Now, you officiated the ceremony today. It was certainly your father when I was Braw lad, but was it your grandfather the first?
He was the first. He would have been in charge, and I think he was quite supportive. As a family, we've always regarded Gala as our town. Be nice to think that the town thinks of us as their laird, but there are other options for them. And I think that, yeah, we've always felt neighbourly. I suppose the newfangled word would be patronising, but in the olden days it would be paternalistic. That our lives were tied up with the town. We employed people from the town, went shopping in the town. You know, there was all sorts of reasonable reasons why we might care about what happened in the town. So yeah, I think grandfather would have been very supportive. He died before I was born, so I've no idea.
No.
But as a family, yeah, the town's important to us.
Yeah. Well, we've arrived at the tower, James, and this is where obviously we cut the sod and take the stone. But obviously this was the ancestral home of the Pringle family. So this is, can you give us a brief history of the tower?
Indeed. This is actually the second tower on the spot. When we first came to Torwoodlee in 1501, we'll have built a tower which was sacked and burned by Elliots and Armstrongs and other lawless clans.
Oh, yes.
In 1568, and it took about 40 years ish to get a rebuild, not because of the council planning department, but because the Elliots and Armstrongs killed George Pringle, and his son he was certainly underage. I think he was in single figures, so he wasn't really fit to take on the estate and the responsibilities. His mother, Mrs. Pringle, will have run the estate for the time being, and then really when he was in his 20s, he went to the court to ask for some justice, which in those days justice was slightly different to what we might imagine it now. But the Elliots and Armstrongs were put to the horn, and because of course they didn't turn up at the court and say, yes, sorry sir. But at that stage he thought it was safe enough to put up another tower. That would be 1601, the remains of which is this. He and his descendants would have lived here relatively peacefully, and bear in mind that most of my knowledge of Pringle history comes from books and records kept by the Pringles. So, of course, we were very nice and peaceful, unlike everyone else.
The good guys.
We were the good ones, the white hats. So he would have lived here until things calmed down. In the 1700s, reaving was not a thing of the past, but it was certainly dying away. And the Pringle of the time thought he could do rather better than a defensive cold tower. Built the house that we currently live in, 1783. Moved everything down there. We've got some furniture, some portraits that would have been in here. They're now in the new house. And literally closed the door and walked away.
Right.
The tower, I think, has been robbed by tenant farmers for dykes and various buildings since then, because up until probably the middle of the 1900s, it didn't occur to us to look after old stuff. It was old, so let's build a new one.
But in recent times, you've obviously had a renovation job done.
We were incredibly lucky with the support of the Falago Environment Fund and Historic Scotland, as they were then, Historic Environment Scotland now. We were able to raise the funds with a little input from the Pringle family to effectively stop the tower falling down anymore. We haven't done more than that. To my mind, it's too romantic a ruin to try and turn it back into a house.
Right.
And it would be a pretty grand house and a pretty big spend to do that anyway. But as it is, as a focal point for the Wednesday night visit by the Braw lads gathering,
it's absolutely first class,
it's the way it is.
It certainly looks remarkably no, new is not the right word, but it looks so much smarter as it was, refreshed as it was years
yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
That's it.
So long may it continue. My hope is that it'll outlast me. I'll be complaining to the architect and the builders if not, but I've no reason to think that it'll start to deteriorate as long as we look after it. And we have got permission from Historic Scotland to spray odd weeds that start to appear every year and just try and keep on top of it.
Very good.
So the next 400 years might be a push, but the next wee while anyway.
That's great.
We keep our fingers crossed.
That's it. Well, James, it just remains for me to say thank you very much for allowing us to come up and giving us an insight into the Pringle family. And I sincerely hope that in 2022 we're back here cutting a sod from your land and taking a stone from the tower.
Doing it properly.
Yes, sincerely hope so.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I don't think there'll be a problem, and certainly you'll be very welcome should you be allowed to come.
Thank you very much.
Not at all.
Great stuff.
What did it feel like when you turned that corner coming off the High Street onto Bank Street? Tell us what that feeling is like when you're met by these crowds, because that's the first real sort of shock to the system, isn't it?
That's my favourite moment of being Braw lad, I'd say. It's just Scott Street, like similar, but it just feels like it's 10 people deep, and it's like, and because you're walking as well, you're
going along slower
and stopping every so often.
So you actually can take it in more, whereas Scott Street is like over in a flash.
Definitely.
I think like, you know, I certainly tried to prepare you guys for it, saying, you know, get ready to come round this corner, but it doesn't prepare you.
No, and I think like I've done common riding for years, and coming along there before, like you notice it, but you don't notice it near as much as when you're at the front of the cavalcade and you're like, whoa. These are all out for us.
They're there for you.
Scott Street, like Scott Street's so special, like it's amazing. But then when you're there at the front of the cavalcade, like going up, it's just something else.
Yeah.
Like
Good.
For many years now, one of the most popular events during Braw Lads Week has been the Fancy Dress Parade. The parade was first introduced in 1964, purely as a children's event. However, 2 years later, it was extended to include adult classes. The original parades were always held on the Thursday evening. The night was changed, however, during the 3 years that the gathering was held on a Friday, when the parade was moved to the Wednesday night. This proved to be a very popular change, with the large crowds that had turned out for the parade staying on to await the return of the horses from Torwoodlee, thus giving the Braw lads and lassies a rousing reception when they descended upon the main streets. So popular was this change that when the gathering returned to its traditional Saturday, the fancy dress parade continued to be held on the Wednesday evening and has remained so ever since. Since its inception back in the 60s, a carnival dance has been held on the evening of the parade and continues to be held to this day. It is the feeling of many that the Wednesday night truly kick-starts the gathering week. That concludes our Wednesday evening, and we look forward to our virtual overseas reception tomorrow evening at 7 p.m.
Braw, braw lads, on Gala water, bonny lads, on Gala water. Let them all say what they will, the gree is aye wi' Gala water. O Tower yon